In the long and shadowed history of Middle-earth, few peoples guarded their treasures with such care and secrecy as the Dwarves. Yet fewer still remember the relics they left behind. These artifacts, wrought with unmatched skill and devotion, tell the silent story of a people whose craftsmanship rivaled the very shaping of the world itself. The relics of the Dwarves lie hidden in the deep places of Middle-earth, shrouded in legend and memory, bearing silent witness to an age when their makers stood at the height of their power and craft. Before we journey further into the story, if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, it would help us bring more tales from Arda to life. Now let's return to the story. The origins of Dwarven relics stretch back to the very beginning, to the deep designs of Aule the Smith, one of the Valar. In his impatience for the coming of the children of Ilúvatar, Aule fashioned the fathers of the Dwarves from the very stone of the earth. Their love of creation, their mastery of metal and stone, and their stubborn endurance all stemmed from his hand. Ilúvatar, in his mercy, did not destroy them, but granted them life, purpose, and a destiny of their own. From that moment, the seeds of their legacy were set. The relics that they would later forge, whether in the darkness beneath the mountains or in halls of uncounted glory, were more than works of art or tools of war. They were extensions of their identity, bound to the memory of their makers. Among the earliest known relics are those tied to the seven fathers of the Dwarves themselves. Each clan descended from one of them. Though little survives of these first treasures, echoes of them are found in songs and half-forgotten tales, carried through the long ages. They were not weapons of war, but emblems of authority and heritage, crowns, axes, and heirlooms that marked the beginnings of Dwarven kingdoms. Unlike the elves, whose memory is immortal and whose relics often served as links to the divine, the Dwarves crafted their relics to endure when memory could not. For in their hearts they knew the fleeting nature of their own lives, and in stone and metal they sought permanence. In the First Age, the Dwarves of Beledost and Nogrod became famed among the Eldar and the Edain alike for their extraordinary smithing. It was in these hidden halls beneath the Blue Mountains that some of the greatest relics of that age were born. Chief among them was the Nauglamir, the necklace of the Dwarves, a work of such brilliance that it shone as though lit from within. Originally wrought by the smiths of Nogrod, the Nauglamir was a treasure beyond compare, its golden chain woven with cunning craft to catch the light in ways unseen before or since. When it later came into the possession of the elves, it became the setting for a jewel greater still, the Silmaril itself. This union of Dwarven craft and elven light stands as one of the most fateful relics in the history of Arda. For from it sprang both awe and ruin. The Dwarves themselves saw such relics not only as symbols of beauty, but as embodiments of worth, testaments to the labor and skill of their hands. Yet, as with all treasures of Middle-earth, greed and desire often twisted their legacy. The Nauglamir brought not only splendor, but also strife, leading to the ruin of Doriath and the spilling of much blood. In this, it stands as a stark reminder of the dual nature of relics, objects of beauty, yet catalysts of destruction. Beyond the Nauglamir, the axes and mail of the Dwarves of the First Age were held in high regard, forged with such precision that even the mightiest blows of Morgoth's servants could not shatter them. The famed Dwarven forged weapons wielded by the warriors of Belegost in the Nirnath Arnoediad, the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, were said to bite through the iron scales of Glaurung the dragon when no other weapon could. These arms, lost upon the fields of slaughter, remain unmarked in the histories of later ages, forgotten beneath the dust of time. Yet they stand among the earliest relics to reveal the unmatched artistry of Dwarven hands. Thus, from their first halls to their greatest wars, the Dwarves wove their history into the things they made. Their relics were not mere possessions, they were the heartbeats of a people, echoing their pride, their resilience, and their tragedies. And as we move forward, we shall see how these treasures, both lost and remembered, shaped the destiny not only of the Dwarves, but of all Middle-earth. In the centuries that followed, as the fires of the First Age burned themselves out and the lands of Beleriand sank beneath the waves, the Dwarves endured. Though much was lost, their craft did not perish with the breaking of the world. From the wreckage of ancient realms, survivors carried with them fragments of their legacy, tools, weapons, and heirlooms that would seed the wealth of their new strongholds in the Second Age. Among these treasures, few were as consequential as the 7 rings of power bestowed upon them by Sauron. Forged in the shadows of deception, the 7 were crafted to amplify the natural strengths of the Dwarves, their resilience, their skill, and above all, their lust for riches. The rings did not enslave the Dwarves as they did men, nor did they elevate them to the perilous heights of the elves. Instead, they stoked a fire already burning within their hearts, the desire to amass wealth and protect their hoarded treasures. Under the influence of the rings, Dwarven lords accumulated vast fortunes of gold and gems, their halls gleaming with unparalleled splendor. Yet with this wealth came peril, for the treasures wrought under the shadow of the rings were cursed with greed, and from that greed came strife, suspicion, and bitter wars. The 7 themselves became relics of dreadful renown. Each was bound to a line of kings, a mark of authority and dominion over their clans. Yet their legacy is steeped in ruin. Dragons, the ancient foes of the Dwarves, were drawn to the hordes magnified by these rings. Fire and death swept through their halls, consuming not only wealth, but also memory. Of the 7, some were destroyed in the flames of dragonfire, while others were reclaimed by Sauron himself in his rising strength. In the end, none survived to the days of the Fourth Age. What remained was the memory of their power, an inheritance of pride, of ruin, and of relentless endurance. But not all relics of the Dwarves in the Second Age were marked by shadow. In Khazad-dûm, the greatest of their strongholds, their craftsmanship reached a zenith. Deep beneath the misty mountains, the Dwarves uncovered mithril, the rarest and most precious of all metals. From this silver-like substance, they forged wonders unmatched in beauty and resilience. The doors of Durin, adorned with Ithildin that shone only in the light of the stars and moon, stand as a testament to their artistry. So too did the mithril-coats, light as silk, yet harder than tempered steel, become among the most prized relics in the histories of elves, men, and dwarves alike. The most famous of these, the coat of mail given to Bilbo Baggins by Thorin Oakenshield, and later worn by Frodo, had its origins in Khazad-dûm. Wrought long before the Third Age, it was a relic of ancient days, a bridge between ages, carrying within its shining links the mastery of generations. Such garments were not only defensive armor, but also living legacies of craft, embodying both beauty and protection. Each one was a relic in itself, often passed down through dynasties, surviving when kingdoms fell. But with all their wealth and wonders, the dwarves of Khazad-dûm would one day dig too deep, awakening a shadow of the ancient world. In that darkness, relics of glory would become relics of memory, and the greatest kingdom of the dwarves would fall into silence. As the ages shifted and new powers rose, the relics of the dwarves traveled far beyond their makers' hands. Some were lost to dragonfire, some seized by kings of men, and some buried beneath ruin. Yet their essence endured, for in every relic, Whether a simple tool forged by a craftsman or a treasure wrought for kings, there remained the spirit of the dwarves themselves, unyielding, enduring, and unforgotten. The Third Age opened upon a Middle-earth reshaped by shadow, yet the dwarves remained steadfast. Though diminished in number and scattered across the mountains, they still held fast to their relics, treasuring each as a sacred inheritance. No tale of this age can be told without recalling Erebor, the lonely mountain, and the fateful horde that lay within. For among the countless jewels and weapons, there rested relics that shaped the destiny of kingdoms. Chief among these was the Arkenstone, the heart of the mountain. Unlike the wrought treasures of smiths, the Arkenstone was a wonder of nature, a gem of pure light unearthed from the roots of Erebor. Yet in the eyes of the dwarves, it was more than a jewel. It was a symbol of their kingship, the radiant heart of Durin's folk. Thorin Oakshield himself called it a gem without equal, and within its light he saw the promise of restored glory. Its brilliance bound the dwarves to their heritage, but it also ensnared them in a net of longing and pride. The Arkenstone stands as a reminder that even relics not wrought by hand can embody the spirit of a people, for in its gleam lay both inspiration and peril. Yet the Arkenstone was not alone in its renown. Within the hoard of Erebor lay blades, mail, and ornaments forged in elder days, relics passed down from realms long since fallen. The mithril-coat that Bilbo carried away, as we have seen, was but one such treasure. Each relic was a thread in the larger tapestry of dwarven endurance, a testament that even when kingdoms were destroyed and halls laid waste, the memory of their labor survived through the works themselves. But treasures attract doom, and relics often bear a fate intertwined with blood. The dragon Smaug, lured by the wealth of Erebor, descended upon the mountain in fire and ruin. His coming scattered the dwarves, destroyed their kingdom, and buried their relics under his dominion. For nearly 2 centuries, the relics of Erebor lay dormant beneath the weight of dragon greed, seen by no eyes save the beasts. The Arkenstone, the mithril, the weapons of old, all were entombed in silence. But even in exile, the memory of these treasures lived on in the hearts of Durin's folk, driving Thorin and his company to reclaim what was lost. The tale of the quest of Erebor, immortalized in the events of The Hobbit, brought these relics once more into the affairs of the world. The Arkenstone became both a token of legitimacy and a source of division, a jewel over which friend and foe alike contended. The mithril-coat would travel beyond the dwarves, carried into the very heart of Mordor itself during the War of the Ring. In this way, relics once hidden in darkness became instruments in the great struggles of Middle-earth, shaping the fate not only of dwarves, but of elves, men, and hobbits. Nor can we forget the relics of Khazad-dûm, though by the Third Age it had become Moria, a place of dread. The halls of Durin's folk were filled with heirlooms of immeasurable value, ancient axes, jeweled helms, and mithril-forged mail. But when the Balrog awoke, these relics were abandoned in haste. Many were left to gather dust in the darkness, guarded by orcs and worse. The few glimpsed by the Fellowship in their perilous passage were mere shadows of what once lay there. It is said that the very crown of Durin, fashioned of gold and mithril, may yet lie lost in those depths, a relic untouched since the days of old. Thus, the relics of the dwarves in the Third Age tell not only of glory and skill, but also of loss. They are the lingering remnants of kingdoms risen and fallen, treasures that outlasted their makers, bound to the cycles of creation and ruin that defined the history of Arda. And though many were lost to dragons, to fire, or to the slow fading of time, their memory endures, as fragments of a story larger than the dwarves themselves, woven into the fade of Middle-earth. In the twilight of the Third Age, as the shadow of Mordor spread across the lands, the relics of the dwarves remained scattered. Some held in trembling reverence, others buried in ruin, and still others wielded in the great struggles of the world. Among the most enduring legacies were the weapons and armor passed down through generations, artifacts that bore silent witness to the long endurance of Durin's folk. One such relic of renown was the Axe of Durin, an heirloom said to have belonged to Durin the Deathless himself. Though its precise fate is obscured in the mists of legend, it is remembered in the songs of the Dwarves as a symbol of authority, carried by the kings of Khazad-dûm as a mark of their lineage. Whether this weapon survived the fall of Moria is unknown, yet its legacy remained unbroken, for the very memory of Durin's name and relics bound his people together through exile and ruin. The crown of Durin, too, wrought of gold and mithril, is spoken of in half-remembered tales, said to shine with the reflected light of stars upon their brow of their kings. In such heirlooms, the Dwarves saw not only splendor, but legitimacy, a visible thread linking their rulers to the first of their fathers. Beyond crowns and axes, the Dwarves fashioned works that found their way into the annals of other peoples. It was Dwarven hands that first crafted the mighty chain Anganor, used by the Valar themselves in the Elder Days to bind Morgoth. Though this relic belonged to no single kingdom of Dwarves, it reveals the reach of their craft, for even the powers of Arda turned to them in their need. In later ages, their skill would continue to ripple outward, touching elves and men alike through weapons, armor, and jewels that outlasted empires. But for all their skill, the Dwarves could not escape the curse of possessiveness bound to their relics. The Arkenstone exemplified this truth most clearly, but many lesser treasures bore the same weight. In their hoards, Dwarves saw more than wealth. They saw memory, permanence, and pride. The relics of their forefathers became anchors of identity, and thus to lose them was to lose a piece of themselves. When Smaug stole Erebor's hoard, it was not merely jewels and gold that were taken. It was the heart of a people, scattered in exile. This deep connection to their relics explains why Dwarves fought with such ferocity to reclaim what was theirs. The Battle of Five Armies was not waged for gold alone, but for the restoration of heritage embodied in the treasures of the Lonely Mountain. Even those relics that never returned to their makers, such as the mithril-coat carried by Frodo into Mordor itself, remained bound to their legacy. The light of mithril shone as a beacon of dwarven craft in the darkest places of Middle-earth, an enduring reminder that even in ruin, their works held power and purpose. In the closing years of the Third Age, Dwarves under the leadership of Dane Ironfoot and later Durin VII began to reclaim fragments of their former glory. In these efforts, relics served as both symbols and guides. To recover a lost crown, a weapon, or even a fragment of mithril was to reaffirm the survival of their people against the slow fading of time. Though many treasures lay forever beyond reach, consumed by dragons, drowned in fire, or buried under mountain stone, the Dwarves clung to those that remained with a devotion that bordered on reverence. By the dawn of the Fourth Age, the relics of the Dwarves stood as living testaments to an unbroken chain of memory stretching back to the creation of their race. Some were famed across all Middle-earth, such as the Nauglamir, the Arkenstone, and the mithril-coats of Khazad-dûm. Others were humbler, kept in the halls of lesser clans, yet no less cherished. Together, they formed a mosaic of a people whose greatest legacy was not merely their kingdoms, but the works they left behind, works that, even when forgotten, bore silent witness to their indomitable spirit. And so, when we speak of the forgotten relics of the Dwarves, we are not only recounting the history of objects, we are uncovering the story of a people who sought permanence in a world of change, who poured their hearts into stone and metal, and who left behind a legacy that endures even when their names are lost. Even as the Fourth Age dawned and the dominion of men spread across Middle-earth, the relics of the Dwarves retained their enduring significance. Though the days of elves and dwarves were fading, their creations continued to shape the memory of Arda, bridging past and present. For the dwarves, relics were not simply artifacts of material worth. They were sacred vessels of identity, resilience, and the will to endure against the tides of time. Durin VII, last of the line of Durin, led his people in the reoccupation of Khazad-dûm. This act alone symbolized a closing of the circle, a return to the greatest of their ancient realms. In the dim light of its vast halls, where shadows of balrogs once lingered, dwarves once more lit forges and set hammer to anvil. Here, relics of ages past were rediscovered, axes fallen in ancient battles, helms left upon the bones of warriors, and ornaments tarnished but not destroyed by centuries of darkness. These finds were not merely trophies unearthed, they were echoes of their ancestors' voices, whispers carried across ages. For the dwarves of Durin VII's house, to reclaim these relics was to reclaim themselves. Yet many relics of their people would forever remain beyond reach. The Nauglamir was lost in the ruin of Doriath, its fate sealed by strife and bloodshed. The 7 rings of power were consumed or taken by Sauron. Their line ended in shadow. Countless treasures of Belegost and Nogrod now lay buried beneath the waves of Beleriand, unreachable save in song. And the greatest relic of all, the Arkenstone, vanished after the death of Thorin Oakenshield, never again seen by dwarf, elf, or man. These absences, too, were part of their legacy, reminders that even the most enduring works can be broken, and that memory itself must sometimes take the place of stone and gold. But what distinguishes the relics of the dwarves is not merely their physical resilience, nor the tragedies tied to their loss. It is the spirit bound within them. Each artifact, whether a crown of kings or a craftsman's tool, bore the indelible mark of its maker. To hold a dwarven relic was to feel the weight of centuries, the stubborn defiance of a people who, though often overshadowed by the grand destinies of elves and men, never relinquished their place in the story of Arda. In this way, the relics outlived even the halls that birthed them, carrying forward fragments of dwarven identity into a world ever-changing. For men who came after, these relics became objects of awe and mystery. Tales of mithril spread far beyond Erebor, and legends of the Arkenstone remained in songs of Ravonian and Gondor alike. To the Rohirrim, the gifts of dwarves in steel and mail were among their most prized possessions, proof of alliances forged in the crucible of war. Even among the elves, who so often looked upon the dwarves with suspicion, their relics commanded respect. The doors of Durin, still standing at the western approach to Khazad-dûm, were remembered as a work of harmony between elves and dwarves, a relic of rare friendship between 2 often distant peoples. In the broader tapestry of Middle-earth, the forgotten relics of the dwarves remind us that history is not only measured in kingdoms or great deeds, but also in the quiet persistence of craft and memory. Where elves sought beauty that echoed the light of the 2 trees, and men sought power to shape their destiny, the dwarves sought permanence, a way to root themselves in a world that was never fully theirs. Their relics, enduring even when their halls crumbled, fulfilled that desire. Thus, the story of the dwarves is told as much in stone and steel as in words. Each relic is a fragment of their spirit, each treasure a testimony of their endurance. And though time may erode the memory of kings and battles, the works of the dwarves remain, buried in mountain halls, gleaming in secret hoards, or living on in legend. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching.